The night sky over the Atlantic shimmered like black glass. Stars hung motionless, cold and indifferent, while the ocean below whispered in long, slow breaths. On a remote platform in the middle of nowhere, a machine unlike anything Earth had. Everbelt was preparing to fire for the first time. It didn't look like much from a distance, just a massive barrel stretching toward the horizon, its metal skin glistening with condensation. But inside, running through that barrel, were magnetic coils the size of train cars, aligned so perfectly that even a fraction of a millimeter's error could tear the whole structure apart. It was the first railgun capable of reaching beyond Earth's atmosphere, beyond even the moon. The kind of weapon that, if fired, could cross half the solar system in minutes. Commander James Holt stood on the observation deck, his hands gripping the railing. He'd been in the Navy for 20 years, but nothing in his career compared to this. His pulse pounded in his ears, not from fear, not exactly. It was something else. The awareness that they were about to do something no one had ever done before, something that could not be undone. "This is it," said Dr. Elise Carr, the lead scientist on the project, her voice low but steady. "Right. Once we fire, there's no going back. The signal will travel farther than the projectile." Holt glanced at her. "The signal." She met his eyes. "Energy leaves a footprint, Commander. The galaxy will know." That was the part the military briefings had never truly addressed. The weapons test wasn't just about speed or range, it was about announcing humanity's arrival into a league of civilizations that, until now, didn't even know Earth existed. Or maybe they did. Maybe they were just ignoring us, watching quietly, waiting for a sign we were worth their attention. Now, they were about to give them one. The countdown began. On the platform's far side, engineers moved like shadows among glowing consoles. The railgun's massive coils began to hum, the air vibrating in a way that made the bones in Holt's jaw ache. The power draw was so great that an entire nuclear plant had been dedicated to this single shot. Somewhere deep in the facility, superconductors were being cooled to near absolute zero, preparing for the magnetic pulse that would launch the payload. "Target locked," came the voice from the control room. "Trajectory Mars orbit. Payload standard tungsten rod. No explosive. It didn't need one." At the velocity they were about to reach, even a solid metal slug could hit with the force of a small nuke. 10 seconds, a voice called. Holt looked at the horizon. There was nothing there, just the ocean, just the stars. And yet it felt like the entire universe was holding its breath. 5 seconds, he thought about the first time humanity had split the atom. The first rocket into space, first satellite beaming a signal into the void. Those moments had changed history, not just for the people alive then, but for everyone who would ever come after. This felt like that for seconds. The hum grew into a roar. Holt could feel the vibration in his ribs. Somewhere behind him, a technician muttered a prayer under their breath. 3 seconds. Carr's hand tightened on the railing. "After this, Commander," she whispered, "we're not alone anymore." 2 seconds. The sky seemed darker now, as if the stars themselves were leaning closer to watch. One on a white flash tore across the platform. There was no traditional bang, no explosive sound, just an ear-splitting crack of the atmosphere being ripped apart, followed by an electromagnetic shockwave that knocked the breath from Holt's lungs. The projectile was gone, moving, so fast that the air itself screamed in its wake. Above them, the night split open. For a fraction of a second, a thin blue arc traced the weapon's path into the heavens, burning into the retinas of anyone who saw it. Then it vanished into the black dot. Silence followed. No wind, no ocean, just silence. The display screens in the control room lit up with telemetry data. The projectile had left the barrel at over 50 kilometers per second. In just minutes, it would be halfway to Mars. Holt exhaled slowly. They had done it. But then something unexpected happened. The long-range sensors, meant only to track the shot's flight path, began picking up. Noise. Not static. Not interference. "A signal, Commander," one of the techs called out. Voice trembling, "We're receiving something. It's not from the payload. It's coming from deep space." Carr's head snapped toward the console. Origin? Unclear. But it's responding to us. The room went dead quiet again. On the main screen, strange patterns of light and sound began to form, a sequence too deliberate to be random. It wasn't in any known language, but it repeated, over and over. Is it a message? Holt asked. Carr's eyes were wide. It's not just a message, Commander. Coordinates. Everyone stared at her. Coordinates to where? Holt pressed. She swallowed hard. Not anywhere in our system. Somewhere far. Very far. And they're not just giving us the location. They're telling us to come. The room seemed to grow colder. Outside, the ocean waves lapped softly against the platform's hull, unaware of the fact that the human race had just been invited, maybe summoned into someone else's domain. For a moment, Holt thought of standing down, of erasing the data, of pretending none of this had happened. But deep down, he knew the truth. Once that shot was fired, there was no undoing it. The galaxy had heard, and now the galaxy was answering. Carr turned toward him, her face pale in the monitor's glow. Commander, they were waiting for this, and I think we just told them we're ready. Somewhere far beyond the edge of human maps, something vast and patient had been watching, and now it was moving. The railgun had fired only once, but that single shot was still echoing across the galaxy like a ghostly drumbeat. On the bridge of the human flagship Resolute Dawn, Captain Mara Ellen stood motionless, her eyes locked on the giant holographic display. The enemy fleet and armada of Korath warships had been reduced to glowing debris in the darkness. Hundreds of vessels gone in seconds. The railgun shot had ripped through them, as if their shields were made of paper. Her crew stared at her, wide-eyed, as if expecting her to say something heroic. But Mara felt no victory, only a heavy, cold weight pressing against her chest. Because she knew something the rest didn't. This wasn't over. That shot had been a message, and every major power in the galaxy had just received it. On the outer edges of human space, deep in the crimson glow of Nebula 7, alien ships floated in tense silence. These weren't Korath, they were members of the Galactic Council, the most powerful alliance in known space. For centuries, they had believed humans were manageable, primitive, harmless. Now, their views were changing, and not for thee. Better, Counselor. Vethrix, a towering insectoid with glistening obsidian skin, leaned forward over the council table. This railgun, his voice clicked and hissed, is not a weapon of war, it is a declaration of dominance. They can't possibly control such power. Another counselor, a scaled reptilian from the Zothari Empire, spat. If they can fire this weapon again, none of our fleets are safe. Ow. In a corner of the chamber, a single, smaller figure listened without speaking. Her name was Sorekai, a spy for the Threll Dominion, and she knew the humans better than most aliens. Ever would. She had lived among them once, disguised, studying their weaknesses. What frightened her wasn't just the railgun, it was who had built it. Humans didn't just make weapons to defend themselves. They made them to win. Back aboard the Resolute Dawn, the crew began repairs on the massive railgun chamber. The weapons. Firing had torn through its own magnetic rails, warping metal and overloading the energy conduits.
Ow.
It would be days before it could fire again. Mara kept her hands clasped behind her back, hiding her unease. The first shot had been experimental. In truth, no one had expected it to work. The energy yield had been far beyond simulations. What she feared most was that humanity itself might not be ready for what they had just unleashed, out in deep space. News spread like wildfire. Smugglers whispered about the death line, the path the railgun shot had carved through the void. Civilians stared up at their sky, wondering if humanity had just painted a target on itself. And somewhere in the cold darkness, old enemies began to stir, for in the ruins of the destroyed Korath fleet, a single black ship had survived. Its hull was scorched, its engines crippled, but its captain had seen everything. And he was transmitting it lived to every warlord, every pirate king, and every alien species that dreamed of challenging the humans. And then something stranger happened 2 weeks later, in a remote system beyond mapped space, a pulse signal was detected. It was faint, irregular, almost like static. But when decoded, it carried an unmistakable image: the Resolute Dawn and its railgun. The signal wasn't coming from any known civilization. It was coming from far, far deeper, from somewhere humans had never reached. Mara stared at the transmission, her blood running cold. Whoever was sending this message knew exactly what humanity had just done. They weren't afraid. They were. Calling humanity into a part of the galaxy? No. Human ship had ever dared to go. The signal did not stop. Every 12 hours without fail, it repeated an alien voice without words, wrapped in an image of the Resolute Dawn's railgun. To some on Earth, it was a challenge. To others, it was a trap. But to Captain Mara Ellen, it was something more dangerous, an invitation. The message's origin point lay far beyond the rim. It's past any navigational chart, past even the old smuggler routes. That region had no name, only a reputation. The few ships that had ventured there never returned. Some said it was cursed space. Others claimed it was the hunting ground of a species so advanced they erased entire civilizations without leaving. Wreckage behind, the high command on Earth debated for days. Some argued that ignoring the signal was the safest choice. "We have already proven our strength," Admiral Drizel said in one heated broadcast, his voice shaking with conviction. "No one will dare test us again." But others warned that the galaxy didn't work that way. Power attracted challengers, and somewhere someone had seen the railgun and decided to draw humanity out. In the end, the decision fell on Mara. She had fired the first shot. She would carry the burden of answering the call. The Resolute Dawn departed under heavy escort 3 battleships, 5 destroyers, and a fleet carrier. Their hyperspace jump was long, the kind that turned ours into an endless, humming silence. Crew members whispered in the corridors, wondering what lay ahead. The railgun chamber was still under repair, its magnetic rails glowing faintly from the constant maintenance. Mara often walked the catwalk above it, staring down at the massive weapon as if it were alive. Days passed. Stars bled into streaks. Space felt heavier here, as though the darkness itself pressed against the hull. Then, without warning, their navigation systems began to fail. Screens flickered, coordinates scrambled. It was as if something in this region didn't want to be mapped. Captain the helmsman called, sweat on his brow. "We're being redirected." The fleet dropped out of hyperspace into a region of space unlike any Mara had seen before. Instead of the cold emptiness of black, the void was filled with colossal shapes, sentient, derelict ships, the size of cities drifting in perfect silence. Some were alien designs no one recognized, others were human. Lost colony ships that history had forgotten, and then they saw it. A single structure floated at the heart of the graveyard, an enormous black ring, large enough to fit an entire planet through its center. Its surface pulsed with faint red lines, like veins carrying some strange energy. The signal's source was here, but before they could approach, the ring began to turn, slowly, deliberately, and as it did, the derelict ships around it shifted, moving into precise formations as if they were obeying a silent command. "They're not dead," whispered Lieutenant Corrin. "They're waiting." From the shadow of the ring, something emerged. At first, it looked like another wreck. But as it drew closer, the truth became clear. It was a living ship. Its surface moved and twisted like muscle under skin, and dozens of glowing eyes opened along its hull. A voice not through comes, but directly inside their minds spoke a single sentence: "We have been watching your kind for a very long time." The crew froze. Mara's pulse thundered in her ears. Whoever or whatever this was, they had sent the signal knowing humanity would come. The railgun shot had not intimidated them. It had intrigued them. The voice continued: "Your weapon is crude, but your potential is not." Before Mara could respond, the living ship unleashed a light so bright it swallowed the fleet whole. The Resolute Dawn's sensors screamed warnings, and in the chaos, Mara realized this wasn't an attack, it was door opening. The blinding light faded slowly, revealing a sight no human eyes had ever witnessed. The fleet found itself inside a vast cosmic chamber, suspended in space, but enclosed by shimmering walls of energy. Stars outside glimmered faintly as if behind. A thick glass and strange celestial bodies floated silently in the void planets with rings of fire. Moons carved from crystal, swirling clouds of color that shifted like living paintings. Captain Mara Ellen felt a chill crawl down her spine. They were inside something ancient, something vast and intelligent. The living ship that had welcomed them was now alongside the Resolute Dawn, its surface pulsing gently with bioluminescence. The eyes along its hull blinked in a slow, rhythmic pattern, like an enormous heartbeat. The alien voice returned clearer now, as if speaking directly to each mind in the room. You have been brought here to learn, to prove that your kind is worthy. Mara looked around at her officers. Questions hung heavy in the air. What did worthy mean in this place? A test awaited them. The living ship projected an Imogen, ancient star map, glowing with roots and symbols no human atlas contained. This is the path of the Ascendants, the guardians of the galaxy. You have disturbed the balance by firing your railgun, a weapon that breaks the old laws. Some call it reckless, others call it brave. Lieutenant Corrin stepped forward. Why bring us here? What do you want from humanity? The ship's eyes glowed brighter. To survive, you must understand that power alone is not enough. You must learn to balance strength with wisdom. The railgun's shot echoed through the cosmos, a challenge and a plea. Many civilizations have fired such weapons and vanished. You have been noticed? Now you will face choices that determine not just your fate, but the fate of all. Suddenly, the shimmering walls shifted, revealing a vision of dark, endless void where shadows moved like living storms. This is the Veil of Silence. Beyond it lies the Devourer, an ancient force that consumes light, life, and hope. It waits for the moment civilizations fracture and fall. Mara's heart pounded. The railgun's first shot had triggered ripples that reached even this darkness. The challenge was clear. Humanity's fire had lit a beacon, drawing the gaze of forces far older and deadlier than any enemy fleet. The living ship's voice softened. You are not alone. But your true test begins now. Will you unite with those who once opposed you? Will you face the darkness together, or fall divided? In that cosmic chamber, beneath the silent watch of ancient stars, humanity and its enemies faced a choice: fight each other, or fight the coming shadow. Mara knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The silence that followed was heavy like the calm before a storm. The Resolute Dawn and the living ship hovered side by side, the alien eyes dimming, but still watching. Below, in the meeting chambers of Earth's High Command, messages from Captain Mara Ellen streamed in with urgency. The railgun's first shot had shattered old boundaries, and now a shadow loomed, one that threatened all life in the galaxy, human and alien alike. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion fleet and humanity's forces agreed on something. Survival meant unity. But trust was fragile, like glass stretched too thin. Old wounds, betrayals, and rivalry surfaced even as new threats forced them closer together. Captain Mara led the Joint Council, working with Admiral Vethrix of the Galactic Council and the Dominion's reluctant commander. Raelthas, their goal was clear: find a way to fight the devourer of the ancient darkness creeping across space, devouring stars and swallowing planets. But the devourer was no ordinary enemy. It was a force of nature, older than time, and every attempt to scan it ended in failure. Weapons faltered against its surface, energy faded in its presence, and ships vanished without a trace. In a desperate gambit, the Alliance turned to the Railgun, humanity's reckless beacon. Scientists theorized that a shot fired into the devourer might disrupt its core energy, slow its advance, or at least send a warning signal to other civilizations. The risk was immense. The railgun's power was unstable, and firing it could tear apart the fragile fabric of space-time. But the alternative was extinction. As the fleets assembled near the Veil of Silence, tension mounted. Mara stood on the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, watching as the weapon charged. Around her, human and Dominion crews worked side by side, each aware that their fate was intertwined like never before. The moment came. The railgun fired again. The bolt of energy raced through space, blazing a path toward the devourer. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. Then, the darkness around the target shuddered like a giant beast disturbed. The devourer responded, unleashing a wave of energy that slammed into the fleet. Shields flared, ships trembled, and communications flickered. But the railgun's shot had done something. It had slowed the devourer's advance, giving the Alliance precious time. Yet victory was bittersweet. The devourer was only temporarily halted. It had learned, adapted, and it was coming back. As the fleets regrouped, Mara realized the war had only just begun. The railgun was no longer just a weapon. It was a signal, call to arms for every life in the galaxy. The galaxy was watching, and humanity's first shot had changed everything. The shadow over the galaxy grew thicker, swallowing stars and hope alike. The devourer had learned from the railgun's fire. It was smarter, faster, more relentless. No fleet, no alliance could stand against its full fury alone. Yet as the darkness crept closer to the heart of human space, something unexpected happened. The uneasy alliance held firm. Captain Mara Ellen, Admiral Vethrix, and Commander Rayalthus led their fleets into the deepest, most dangerous part of the Veil of Silence. There, amid forgotten stars and ancient ruins of lost civilizations, they found a secretan ancient weapon, older than time itself, hidden in the remnants of a vanished race. The weapon was unlike anything they had ever seen, colossal cannon, fueled not by matter or energy, but by the very fabric of space-time. To fire it required a power source the railgun alone could not supply. But if combined, the railgun's technology and the ancient weapon could create a blast capable of pushing the devourer back. Maybe forever. The choice was clear, but terrifying. Sacrifice the railgun and the resolute Dawn to power the weapon and save the galaxy. Or retreat and face extinction. Mara did not hesitate. She gave the order to integrate the railgun's final shot into the ancient cannon. As the combined weapon charged, every crew member held their breath. The countdown was silent, but the tension was deafening. When the blast finally fired, it was more than a shot. It was a scream across the cosmos. Light exploded, tearing through the devourer's dark veil, fracturing the shadow and scattering it like ash in the solar wind. The darkness recoiled, defeated for now. The stars returned, burning bright once again. But the price was great. The resolute Dawn was lost, swallowed by the weapon's own unleashed power. As survivors looked to the sky, a new understanding dawned. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers beyond imagining. But humanity had stepped onto the stage not as victims, but as players willing to fight for their place. The railgun's first shot had changed everything. It had torn open the darkness, but it also opened a path forward. A path filled with alliances, challenges, and hope. And somewhere, far beyond the edge of known space, watchers waited. They had seen the fire humanity could wield, and they were watching, waiting for the next move.